Hello, my name is Veronica Johnson, and this is my testing for validation for the theory of psychosocial development by Erik Erikson. As a brief overview, Erikson published his 8 stages of psychosocial development in 1950, and the study focused on emotional disturbances of a person in their late teens and early 20s. He created life cycle stages to to advance his ethical program and also explain human development. He felt that social dynamics was very important to the developmental process, and he felt that human beings live and develop over a lifetime, beginning with infancy and on throughout older adulthood. In each of the 8 stages, one psychosocial theme is the focal, which has two opposing tendencies, one positive and another negative. The positive and negative must come into balance in order to produce the stage's central strength and go on to the next stage. The first article that I used to validate Erikson's theory was the Psychosocial Inventory of Ego Strengths, Development and Validation of a New Erikson Measure. In this study, ego was the examination for the study using Erikson's psychosocial theory. The study was scrutinized by several of Erikson scholars, and also 2 studies were conducted by college students who lived in the United States and Canada. There was considerable evidence for the 8 ego strengths. Convergent validity was shown between psychosocial inventory of the ego strengths and assessments of identity achievement, self-esteem, purpose in life, internal focus of control, and also sex roles. Discriminant validity was observed in negative correlations between ego strength and hopelessness, identity diffusion, identity standstill, and personal distress. The aim of the research was to develop a valid, measurable instrument of ego strength, and this psychosocial inventory of ego strength occurred over a 6-month period where careful reading, examination, and discussion of Erikson's work on the ego strengths occurred between the authors. They were also examined according to several criteria to construct a test construction. So, 6 graduate students examined the 16 items associated with each ego strength, and they matched the item of 1 or 2 themes with the together. The procedure was repeated 8 times for each ego strength. If there were problematic items, they were identified and they were classified and possibly thrown out if needed. If they were problematic, they were noted, and they were also classified in subscales of hope, will, fidelity, love, and care. They were re-examined, and they were either rephrased, eliminated, or placed in an alternate theme for the ego strength. The validity was assessed through feedback obtained from Erikson scholars. These individuals were sent a copy of the ego strengths, their corresponding themes, and the 128 items that were created by the 6 graduate students. The content validity was assessed through the scholar's judgment on the appropriateness of the themes for each ego strength, where themes were consistent with Erikson's theory. The critique of the validity is that the group of subjects were the same age, being in late adolescence. There was not much differentiation in age. The psychosocial inventory of ego strengths was designed so that adolescents and adults could take this assessment to establish the degree of ego strength and indicate psychosocial wellness from Erickson's perspective. And also, these psychosocial inventory strength assessments were completed in small group settings. As far as the instrument used, the psychosocial inventory strength assessment included 128 self-report items that were answered on a Likert-type scale. Responses range from 5 to describes me very well to 1 does not describe me well. Negatively phrased items were reverse weighed, and items were summed up to obtain a score for each subscale, resulting in a total score. So I mentioned that 2 studies were conducted in addition to be examined by the Erickson scholars. So in the first study, the assessment was given to 244 undergraduate females aging from 19 to 23. They attended a university in Canada. Ethnicity was determined according to the self-data report, and most of the participants were of English Canadian origin. Only a small number of males completed the questionnaire, and so it was decided only to include females in the final sample. Participants were recruited from university courses, and extra credit was offered for their completion of the instrumentation. In the second study, participants included 63 male, 90 female, through the ages of 18 through 22. They are also undergraduates at a medium-sized university in the United States. And all of the subjects were white according to the self-report data. The results of the study was that they could not really measure age since all of the participants were very close in age. The sample size was very close in age. There were significant negative correlations between diffusion and mortalism of the ego strengths. And there were also positive correlations between ideological and interpersonal achievement and student and ego strengths in this first study. The first study showed significant positive correlations between the purpose of life, internal focus of control, and self-esteem, and several of the ego strengths had negative correlations between hopelessness and the ego. Those who scored high in ego strength had higher identity achievement, purpose of life, internal focus of control, self-esteem, sex roles, and masculinity and femininity. Those high on ego strength also scored lower on hopelessness, identity diffusion, and personal distress. Those high in ego strength appear to be more psychologically mature and adjusted individuals. So, my second article of study that I used to validate Erickson's theory was a review of measures of Erickson's stages of psychosocial development, evidence for a general factor. This particular study was to examine the psychosocial development, general factor of psychosocial development. It was important because it was thought to influence Erickson's psychosocial theory. The general factor of psychosocial development will help to understand how psychosocial changes are related to each other, and also help to understand the lifespan's development. The study was conducted using a meta-analysis to find intercorrelations among psychosocial stages, and 62 correlation matrices from 50 different samples were analyzed, and there were 5 strategies to collect data. The prediction of the study was that this general factor, psychosocial development, was a part of Erikson's stages of psychosocial development. So a total of 31 theses, dissertations, or articles were found to meet the curricula for the inclusion. A total number of participants across all studies was 20,326. And there was, like I mentioned, there was a meta-analysis conducted to show intercorrelations. The factor analysis of intercorrelations between the stages and a number of studies measured the Erikson stages were used to test the hypothesis. The results supported the existence of the GFPD, which is also called the growth factor physical psychosocial development. A critique of the validity is that limitation of the results don't supply much information to the nature of the growth factor psychosocial development, like exactly what it means. And other psychometric considerations exist that could be connected to the interstage correlations. The last study that I looked at was psychosocial intimacy, relationships with parents, and well-being among emerging adults. This study focused on how individuals develop during psychosocial intimacy. The development of psychosocial intimacy could be reflective in parenting and parent-child relationship. That is also supported by Erikson's theory. Parenting contributes to the psychosocial and relational tools for emerging adults to develop intimacy. So this study consisted of 232 undergraduate students. The participants completed an online questionnaire about their parental relationships, attachment style, measures of well-being, identity, and also intimacy development. There was a wide range of ethnic composition for this study. The undergraduate students were completed an online questionnaire, and once they were given consent to take the questionnaire, they received extra credit, and the questionnaire took about 30 to 45 minutes. So again, 232 adults, emerging adults, college students complete the questionnaire about their intimacy development, identity development, and self-efficacy in romantic relationships, also about parenting and well-being. They completed several questions that came from a pool of previous questionnaires that is listed here. The results were that there were gender differences. Women were more significantly higher on parental overprotection, and they also had higher depressive symptoms. Ethnic differences played a part on parenting and the type of parenting that the person received. One's ability to achieve intimacy was definitely shaped by their experience with parenting, particularly their attachment to parents. The study found that identity achievement, a lack of avoidant attachment, and self efficacy in romantic relationships predicted intimacy development, which supports Erickson's theory that identity must be achieved prior to intimacy development. The study found that individuals with low intimacy were higher on the loneliness scale, lower on self-esteem, and lower on happiness than those with high intimacy. And also those with low intimacy had higher depressive symptoms. As validity. An analysis of VAERS was used to investigate the differences by gender and ethnicity. Pearson product moment correlation was used to assess associations with age. Analysis of variables indicate that identity, self-efficacy in romantic relationships, and lack of avoidant attachment to parents were significant predictors of intimacy. Intimacy was positively associated with parental caring, parental challenge, self-efficacy in romantic relationships, happiness, and self-esteem. And also intimacy was negatively associated with attachment to anxiety, attachment to avoidance, parental overprotection, depressive symptoms, and also loneliness. A critique of this study was that the sample size was small and it also skewed toward women, which limit the gender ability of the findings of a larger population. And then also the ethnic differences may have been and how they are parented may be related and to the findings and was not addressed in the study. Current relationship status was also not measured. So if someone was currently in a relationship, they may have scored higher rather than not being in a relationship. So that was not asked. These are my references in all three of my articles. Erickson's theory was validated and used to support his theory of psychosocial development. Thank you for listening.